What's up, everyone? It's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and I think it's fair to say that everyone expects a marked and noticeable increase in be it performance or hardware or graphics or features, whatever it is, when you move from one console generation to the next. So I mean, you came from the Nintendo, you went to the Super Nintendo, you got better graphics was your main thing. You came from your Super Nintendo to your N64, you had better graphics, you had analog controls to an extent. You came from the N64 to the GameCube, same deal. You came from the GameCube to the Wii, we won't talk about. And yeah, you get the point. So in general, you get more features, better quality, etc., as you go. However, it does feel to me like the eighth generation of consoles, and you could argue the ninth as well, because the Nintendo Switch is actually a ninth generation console. It's the first one we have, but it's actually the only one we have as well. But the eighth generation of consoles, I think it's fair to say, was very weird. For the simple reason is a lot of the consoles launched, be it the Wii U in 2012 or the Xbox One or PS4 in 2013, actually launched without several key features that had been around for, well, 10 years or had been around in previous iterations of that company's console. So it's not to bash on any individual manufacturer or any individual console. It's just very strange why many of these companies made these decisions to omit key features that they had previously implemented for multiple years, if not a decade. That really blows my mind, and some of them are just so basic and such fundamental features that you wouldn't even think of overlooking them because it just didn't make any sense. So we're going to look at the Wii U first, and the Wii U is the Wii U is a special case because not only was it Nintendo's first HD console way too late, it was also the first 8th generation console which released too late, essentially, because realistically it was a 7th gen console that they called an 8th gen console. But when you look at some of the stuff that was on that, many, like actual voice chat, non-game or cross-game voice chat was missing. This is a feature that we have enjoyed since 2005 on other rival platforms. You could even technically argue earlier if you include PC, but I'm not going to include that because this is really just a focus on consoles. The original OG Xbox, for example, that did technically have a one-on-one voice chat, but it wasn't cross-game. You actually had to sit, the two of you had to sit on the dashboard and just sit in basically a private chat together and just talk. The PlayStation 3 was the same deal because of memory limitations. It didn't have a cross-game chat and it didn't have a party system. You pretty much just had to sit there talking one-on-one on the dashboard. And the Xbox 360, which launched with an individual cross-game one-on-one solo chat, and then a couple of years later when they revamped the dashboard, they actually added a party chat system. So there was a marked improvement on that, and that of course transferred over to the Xbox One, which launched with a party system, which was eventually upped to include even more people available in the party. But that's one example from Nintendo that Nintendo haven't even learned to this day. The Nintendo Switch launched, the 9th generation console launched in 2017, and it does not have voice chat. They're going to bring in voice chat much later, and I say much later because, let's face it, 6+ months after launch is much later, and it's going to be handled separately through an app on a smartphone instead of through your console, your gaming console. It's all so weird, and some of the things I'm going to list off are just so basic, and you could argue that they're so minor, but at the same time, they're really not. They're just such basic fundamental stuff that they should be there. So you look at the Xbox One. Now the Xbox One was a bit of a mess when it actually launched, and I've had my Xbox One since day one, and I've gone through the various iterations of the dashboard. I've had the frustrations of several features not being there. For example, did you know that when the Xbox One launched, you could not manage your hard drive space? That's right, you could not see how much space was left on your hard drive. So not only was it strange for a console, the third console in Microsoft's life to launch without what's basically inventory or storage management, but This company has previously launched two consoles with storage management, and yet for some reason they launched their third console without inventory. Why do I keep saying inventory management? I'm so used to just playing games and saying inventory, but without storage management. There was a time when you could not see how much space was used. That was obviously patched in eventually. But another one as well is the battery life indicator of your controllers on Xbox One. That was not there originally. You could not see. I know they give you kind of a rough estimate. There's the battery indicator and it goes down in like 20 or 25% increments. That originally was not available on Xbox One at all. Yet it was available on Xbox 360 since almost I want to say since inception. I didn't get my Xbox 360 until about 3 months after launch. So I can't remember if it was there on day one or not, because let's face it, at this point it was 12 years ago. Well, it was 12 years ago when it launched. But I remember it always being there from as early as I had it. So maybe it was there on launch. It would make sense. Why was something as basic as this not implemented on launch and just removed? Now, we're not going to talk about the whole online DRM thing, because that's not a feature that they had previously but removed. But there's even some other basic things as well. The notification system on Xbox 360. When a friend comes online, it pops up. X so and so is online. When you're playing, eventually they changed it so that while you were playing a game, if someone on your friends list actually started playing the same game as you, it would come up and so and so has started playing Gears of War 1 or Gears of War 2 or whatever it is. So you could know, and you could have the ability to, this person is playing this game, maybe I should invite them. So it was a good notification system. It was really handy, and it was not too overwhelming. And then you have the Xbox One. The Xbox One launched with no notification system. Many people don't remember that. Many people just remember it as, you had to manually go and set people to add as favorites so they'd actually show up. That wasn't there on launch. That was added post-launch. Originally, there was no way to have any notifications on Xbox One. So there was no way to set people as favorites that would actually pop up. Me, for example, at the moment, I have it set so that when certain people that I would play with on a regular basis log on to the Xbox One, their notifications pop up, and everyone else who logs on to anything on the Xbox ecosystem doesn't show up. But obviously I can still go into my friends list and see them. But that wasn't even there at launch. That ability to manually select people that would come online and offline and whatever, versus just everyone showing up online, none of that was available. It was just missing for some reason. And don't forget, this is a feature that had been on the Xbox 360 for how many years? Exactly. It makes no sense. And here's one of the ones, if not one of the biggest ones, that completely blows my mind how Microsoft left this out. So, Microsoft launched the Xbox One without Dolby Digital support. Now remember, Microsoft, when they came out with the Xbox One and announced it 6 or 7 months before launch, they were positioning it as a giant media box, and essentially it's in the name, your Xbox One. You have one device for your entire living room, and it would handle your TV media, your movie media, and your gaming. But it did not launch with the most commonly used digital surround sound 5.1 format. It was patched in later, but it didn't launch with it. It only launched with linear PCM over HDMI, or it launched with, what was the other one? Not Dolby Digital, DTS. Now, DTS is becoming increasingly more popular nowadays, but the fact is that almost all games back at launch on the Xbox One only had Dolby Digital support. They did not have DTS support. So, what were they doing? Dolby Digital used on basically every movie DVD, every movie Blu-ray, and I realize Blu-rays have come increasingly ahead when it comes to, say, audio soundtracks. Now we've got like 7.1 Dolby Digital Master Audio and DTS Master Audio and all that. But the point is, at the time, it was, and it probably still is, the most commonly used digital surround sound format, and it launched without it. So Microsoft games had basically no support for it. They had to be played in stereo. Now, fair enough, digital stereo, but stereo nonetheless. Now, admittedly, when it comes to this, I don't remember exact details too much. For the simple reason is, when it comes to the PlayStation 4, I just kind of ignored it. Now, I got my PlayStation 4 within a week of its actual launch. I didn't get it on launch day. I got it maybe 3 or 4 days later, and I got home, played Killzone Shadowfall pretty hardcore for maybe like 2 or 3 days, and then I basically just almost ignored it, because at the time we didn't know that the PlayStation 4 was still going to be the lead console platform of the 8th generation. At the time, the PlayStation brand was still generally a stigma because of the PS3 and the huge amount of negatives that had surrounded it for so many years. And Xbox One was really the focus of the media attention for a good while anyway. So mostly becoming off the Xbox 360. So I know personally I was just kind of phasing out the PlayStation 4 info, and I wasn't really keeping up with it. But all I can really remember, at least anyway, is that a feature that had been asked for years and eventually brought to the PlayStation 3 several years before the launch of the PlayStation 4 was not actually present, and it was only added in 2016. Now that feature, of course, is folders, because what we call the desktop or main screen system on the PlayStation 4 is a bit of a mess as it is, but you get the point. A feature that Sony have implemented several years before the launch of their 8th generation console, one that was much lauded for, and it was missing for several years after the launch of their current generation console. Now, I could go on and on again and again, more so about the Switch in this case, but I mean, there's so many basic things missing from the Switch, as in, it actually blew my mind about 2 weeks ago when I logged on to a Nintendo website, and one of the articles on Nintendo, and this was said completely unironically, that they were advertising that a new feature of one of the Nintendo Switch firmware updates was now the ability to store your credit card info. Just sit there for a second and think about that. Something that we've been doing since the 90s is now a feature patched in post-launch of a 2017 9th generation hardware. Yeah, it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind. But there's only one real thing that I do want to talk about when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, and glaring omissions, not even including the terrible system for friends and friend codes and chat and matchmaking. We're going to completely ignore that, because, let's face it, Halo 2 did that stuff better in 2004 than the Nintendo Switch does it in 2017. So, ignoring all of that, let's look at, this one also factors into Wii U, by the way. Let's look at a huge glaring omission from the Wii U, at least at launch, and the Nintendo Switch at launch, which still is up in the air for God knows whenever it happens. The Virtual Console. Now, Nintendo were one of the biggest proponents of the Virtual Console, for the simple reason is when they launched it on the Wii, Nintendo has such a rich back catalogue. Even for themselves, even just with Nintendo consoles. They obviously went above and beyond with support on that. Like, they had TurboGrafx, they had Commodore 64, they had Master System, they had Mega Drive, Genesis for you Americans out there. So they went above and beyond when it came to the Virtual Console, and it astounded everyone. Now, yes, when the Virtual Console did launch, post-launch of the Wii, it was pretty much crap for a few years. It actually took about 2 or 3 years to start releasing good games, and that's when it built up momentum and built up steam, and it went buck wild. So, the fact that the Wii U launched without a Virtual Console, like 5 or 6 years after the Virtual Console was implemented on the previous generation console, and it launched without it, makes no sense. Now, we all know the Virtual Console on the Wii U was pretty much a flop. No one wanted to release their games for it because no one would buy them, because no one bought the Wii U. But again, the Nintendo Switch. launches in 2017, over 10 years after the original Virtual Console from Nintendo, and there is no Virtual Console whatsoever. In fact, Hamster, a company who makes ACA Neo Geo ports, they have more arguable Virtual Console games than Nintendo do on their 2017 hardware. What does that say? Now, I know they're probably going to announce it at E3 in 2 weeks. We'll see how it goes. But the point is, why are consoles launching with such basic features and such features that have been widespread and common from the manufacturer, from the previous console, from even 2 previous generations ago, and they're still launching with that? It makes no sense to me. God knows what the PlayStation 5 is going to launch with. God knows what the Xbox 2 is going to launch with. It's going to be a weird one, that's all I can say. We'll see how it goes. There's so much time, and it just blows my mind how people can get away with these kinds of decisions and how they overlook these things or how they think it's a good idea to launch without them. It's absolutely insane. Anyway, what's your recollection of a feature that has been missing and blowing your mind on your whatever console, on your Wii U, on your Xbox One, on your PS4, on your Nintendo Switch, on whatever the hell it is? What's the feature that you've been clamoring for that everyone else has been using for 10 plus years? Let me know all that in the comments section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter, details in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.